Hello, and welcome to our third Holy Week reflection. Yesterday we left Jesus at the words that he hid himself from the crowds, and that was the end of his public ministry. He's now in the room with his disciples in the upper room, and we'll read more about that tomorrow as well. But today's reading is from John chapter 13, verses 21 to 32. After he had said this, Jesus was troubled in spirit and testified, "I tell you the truth, one of you is going to betray me." His disciples stared at one another and were lost to know which one of them he meant. One of them, the disciple whom Jesus loved, was reclining next to him. Simon Peter motioned to this disciple and said, "Ask him which one he means." Leaning back against Jesus, he asked him, "Lord, who is it?" Jesus answered, "It is the one to whom I will give this piece of bread when I have dipped it in the dish." Then, dipping the piece of bread, he gave it to Judas Iscariot, son of Simon. As soon as Judas took the bread, Satan entered into him. "What you are about to do quickly," Jesus told him. But no one at the meal understood why Jesus said this to him. Since Judas had charge of the money, some thought Jesus was telling him to buy what was needed for the feast, or to give something to the poor. As soon as Judas had taken the bread, he went out, and it was night. When he was gone, Jesus said, "Now is the Son of Man glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will glorify the Son in himself, and will glorify him at once." Here is an intimate meal. It's the first time we hear of the beloved disciple. Everybody is reclining at the table around the Passover meal, and that was an important symbol because they were celebrating their liberation from Egypt when they were bound to slavery and found their freedom through the Passover. And 3 people reclined at the table. Slaves would sit or would stand, but 3 people reclined. And so, although in normal practice you might vary, in special feasts, and certainly the Passover, you would always recline. Everybody was on their left side, and they ate with their right hand, with their heads towards the table and their feet pointing away. And Jesus says, "Somebody in here will betray me." And again we hear that word that Jesus was troubled. The word is used in the Old Testament for the whole earth being shaken or mountains being shaken. It's that real sense of upset and unrest. Jesus was troubled. One of his closest friends, one who reclined at the table with him, was going to betray him, and nobody knew who it was, despite our pictures loving to include bits of symbolism and clues as to Judas' nefarious intentions. None of the disciples could tell that anything was wrong. And so Peter motioned to the beloved disciple and said, "Ask Jesus who it is." And that's when, leaning back, he would have been at Jesus' right hand side. He would have leant back and his head would have been right at his chest. And he asked who it was, and Jesus replied that who I dip this bread and pass it to after, that is who is going to betray me. And it's a quiet, whispered conversation, and we know that because none of the rest of the disciples heard what Jesus had said, they all remained confused at what happens next. And so this picture of the beloved disciple being close enough to Jesus to have a whispered conversation is this vivid picture of friendship and love contrasted with this vivid picture of the deepest betrayal. Here is Jesus flanked by love and flanked by betrayal. And if we live lives where we are open to one, then we are open to the other. Just like the same nerves that give us pleasurable sensations are the same ones that are used for pain. To be open to one is to be open to both. It says when Judas took that piece of bread that Satan entered. I don't believe that John here is saying that Judas became demon possessed, but rather that it's a signal that what he does is being used in the schemes of the evil one, is being used by the powers of darkness as they try to overcome the light. The phrasing that John uses, I think, shows his revulsion and his disgust at what went on. Jesus said, what you're going to do quickly. When you dip a piece of bread and pass it to somebody, that was a special act of friendship. This is the last olive branch to be extended by Jesus. This is your chance, Judas, to change your mind. And I think he could have changed his mind. What Judas did was to present an easy way for the chief priests and the rulers to get Jesus, not an essential way. And so this last act of love became the decisive moment of judgment. The passage ends with Jesus talking about his glorification again. And we read yesterday of his glorification being bound up with his judgment. And part of that judgment is revealed by how we respond to Jesus, just like Judas' response to Jesus sealed that judgment. Here, his glorification is now the act by which we will all be judged by. How do you respond to Jesus? The departure of Judas is comparable to the arrival of the Greeks in yesterday's passage. They both signal the beginning of the end, although it's intensified in today's passage, because Judas' action is now set and confirmed. John mentions that Judas leaves into the dark, and it's part of this symbolism of now is the moment of darkness building up and doing its worst, amassing its forces and about to unleash it all on Jesus. There's so much we're faced with in terms of emotion in today's passage. There's confusion, there's deep love, and there's deep betrayal. That picture of the beloved disciple's head at the chest of Jesus as he whispers is quite reminiscent of how John describes the relationship between Jesus himself and God. In his prologue in chapter 1, he says that he is at the side of the Father. He is beside the Father in heaven. That's a relationship with Jesus that is now open to all of us because of the events of Holy Week. To know that deep love and deep intimacy. And so after this video, pray that you would know that intimate love from the one who never betrays. And pray that we would be able to love him back with all our hearts. The Lord bless you.